No senior in the world will believe these shocking changes that strike the human body the moment you hit 75, because they don't arrive with pain, warning, or symptoms. They arrive like ghosts, silent, invisible, undeniable. And what scientists discovered over the last decade is so disturbing that aging researchers across the world are finally admitting the truth. Every person on Earth goes through the exact same 5 biological shifts once they cross the age of 75. It doesn't matter whether you've lived like an athlete, eaten like a monk, meditated like a monk, avoided sugar, avoided stress, taken every supplement, or felt young for your age. None of that stops what happens next. These 5 changes activate like hidden switches buried deep in your body decades earlier. Switches you didn't know existed until the consequences begin to show. The terrifying part is that your body doesn't alert you when these switches turn on. These shifts happen behind the curtain, quietly rewriting your health until one day something suddenly feels different and you realize the process started years earlier. Doctors don't talk about this because most seniors arrive long after the process is underway. Families don't notice the early signs because they're almost impossible to see. And seniors themselves chalk everything up to normal aging, when in reality, these 5 changes follow a predictable biological sequence discovered in thousands of scans and medical records from adults in the US, Europe, and Asia. And the number 2 change, a neurologist study found it begins damaging the brain 3 to 4 years before seniors feel even the tiniest symptom, making it the most silent and the most dangerous. In this video, we will reveal all 5 changes, and stick around because number 1 controls how fast your entire body ages. Reference details are in the description. Before we dive in, how old are you and where are you watching from? We're reading and replying to every comment. Now let's start with change number 5 because what really happens at 75 is something most people never discover until it's too late. But you're about to learn it right now. Number 5. Your sleep architecture completely restructures itself. Once you get 75, your brain literally rewrites the rules of how you sleep. And this isn't just about needing less sleep or waking up earlier. It's a complete architectural overhaul of your sleep cycles that affects every single person who reaches this age. Research from the Sleep Research Society shows that after 75, your brain reduces deep sleep production by up to 70%, which means that restorative stage where your body repairs tissues, strengthens immunity, and consolidates memories basically becomes a rare luxury instead of a nightly guarantee. Your brain starts producing less melatonin naturally, dropping by about 15% every year after 75, which explains why you might find yourself wide awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling even when you're exhausted. The fascinating part is that your circadian rhythm, that internal clock that tells you when to sleep and wake, actually shifts forward by about 2 to 3 hours, which is why dinner at 400 p.m. suddenly makes perfect sense and why you're ready for bed, when everyone else is just settling in for their evening Netflix session. Scientists call this advanced sleep phase syndrome, and it happens because the suprachiasmatic nucleus in your brain, basically your body's master clock, starts running on a different schedule due to changes in light sensitivity and hormone production. The real kicker is that your sleep becomes incredibly fragmented, with the average 75-year-old waking up between 15 to 20 times per night, though you might only remember a few of these awakenings. To work with these changes instead of against them, sleep experts recommend embracing the new schedule rather than fighting it, which means going to bed when you feel tired, even if it's 700 p.m. and using those early morning hours productively instead of lying in bed frustrated. Creating a sleep sanctuary becomes crucial at this age, with room temperature between 60 to 67 degrees being optimal, because your body's temperature regulation also changes after 75, making you more sensitive to heat during sleep. Light exposure timing becomes your secret weapon. Getting bright light exposure, preferably sunlight, within 30 minutes of waking helps anchor your new circadian rhythm, while avoiding all screens and bright lights after 6 p.m. helps trigger what little melatonin production you have left. Many people find success with the split sleep pattern that was actually common before the Industrial Revolution, where you sleep for 4 hours, wake for an hour or 2 of quiet activity like reading or light stretching, then sleep for another 3 to 4 hours. The key is accepting that 8 straight hours of sleep is no longer your reality, and working with your new sleep architecture instead of constantly fighting against it. Because the stress of trying to force old sleep patterns actually makes the fragmentation worse, and can lead to chronic insomnia that affects up to 60% of people over 75. Your sleep might be different, but different doesn't mean worse if you adapt your expectations and routines to match your body's new blueprint. But while you're adjusting to these sleep changes, something even more dramatic is happening to your body's thermostat. Before we dive deeper, show your support by liking this video and subscribing. You can't afford to miss the next secret. Number 4, your internal thermostat breaks down permanently. At 75, your body's ability to regulate temperature doesn't just decline. It fundamentally breaks, leaving you vulnerable to both heat and cold in ways that would have been unthinkable just a few years earlier. The hypothalamus, that tiny region in your brain responsible for temperature control, loses about 20% of its thermosensitive neurons by age 75, which means your body literally can't detect temperature changes as accurately as it used to. This explains why you might be freezing while everyone else is comfortable, or why a slightly warm day can leave you feeling completely drained and dizzy. Your sweat glands, which are your body's primary cooling system, decrease in number and efficiency by up to 40%, making it incredibly difficult to cool down once you get hot, which is why heat stroke hospitalizations jump by 300% after age 75, according to CDC data. Simultaneously, your blood vessels lose their ability to constrict and dilate properly in response to temperature changes, a process called vasomotor adaptation, which means your body can't shift blood flow to warm up your extremities or cool down your core the way it used to. The subcutaneous fat layer under your skin, which acts as natural insulation, thins by about 30% after 75, leaving you with less protection against cold temperatures and explaining why that winter chill seems to penetrate right to your bones. Your metabolic rate, basically how fast your body burns energy to create heat, drops by approximately 20% after 75, which means you're producing less internal heat even when you need it most. The scariest part is that your body stops sending clear warning signals about temperature extremes, with studies showing that people over 75 often don't feel thirsty, even when dehydrated, and don't shiver effectively when cold, removing 2 critical survival mechanisms. To manage this breakdown, experts recommend keeping your living space between 68 and 74 degrees year-round, which might seem warm in winter and cool in summer, but represents the narrow comfort zone your body can handle. Layering becomes essential because you need to be able to adjust quickly, as your perception of temperature can shift multiple times throughout the day due to blood pressure changes, medication effects, and activity levels. Hydration takes on new importance because your body uses water for temperature regulation. But since you don't feel thirsty, setting hourly water reminders becomes crucial, aiming for at least 48 ounces daily, regardless of thirst.
Installing thermometers in multiple rooms helps you rely on objective temperature rather than your unreliable internal sensors. And many people find success with programmable thermostats that automatically adjust throughout the day to match your body's changing needs. Exercise, paradoxically, becomes both more important and more dangerous. You need physical activity to maintain what's left of your thermal regulation, but you have to be extremely careful about exercising in any temperature extreme, with experts recommending indoor exercise whenever outdoor temperatures are below 40 or above 75 degrees. Creating temperature-stable microenvironments becomes crucial, which means having a perfectly climate-controlled bedroom, even if the rest of the house varies, and always carrying extra layers and water when leaving home because your margin for error with temperature exposure shrinks to almost nothing. Yet, as challenging as temperature regulation becomes, it pales in comparison to what's happening inside your digestive system. Number 3, your digestive system enters permanent slowdown mode. The day you turn 75, your entire digestive system shifts into what gastroenterologists call presboesophagus and presbolon. Fancy terms that basically mean every part of your digestive tract starts moving in slow motion permanently. Your esophagus, the tube connecting your mouth to your stomach, loses up to 50% of its muscle coordination, which means swallowing becomes a conscious effort instead of an automatic process. And that feeling of food getting stuck isn't your imagination. It's your esophageal muscles literally forgetting how to work in sequence. The production of saliva drops by about 40% after age 75. And since saliva contains crucial digestive enzymes that start breaking down food before it even reaches your stomach, this means digestion becomes harder from the very first bite. Your stomach produces 30% less acid after 75, which might sound like a good thing if you've dealt with heartburn. But this acid is essential for breaking down proteins, absorbing vitamin B12, iron, and calcium, and killing harmful bacteria that enter with food. The real crisis happens in your small intestine, where the finger-like projections called villi that absorb nutrients shrink by up to 25%, creating what researchers call a malabsorption syndrome that affects virtually everyone over 75 to some degree. Your pancreas, which produces the enzymes that break down fats, proteins, and carbohydrates, reduces its enzyme output by about 40%, which explains why that favorite meal that never bothered you before suddenly leaves you bloated and uncomfortable. The large intestine or colon becomes particularly problematic with transit time, how long it takes food to move through, increasing from the normal 30 to 40 hours to sometimes over 100 hours in people over 75, leading to chronic constipation that affects 60% of this age group. The liver, while remarkably resilient, still loses about 30% of its mass and blood flow by age 75, making it less efficient at processing medications and nutrients, which is why doctors often need to adjust medication doses for older adults to work with this slowdown instead of against it. Eating smaller meals every 3 to 4 hours rather than 3 large meals helps your struggling digestive system handle the workload with each meal, ideally containing no more than 400 to 500 calories to prevent overwhelming your reduced enzyme production. Chewing becomes critically important. Aim for 30 chews per bite to compensate for reduced saliva and help break down food mechanically since your chemical digestion is compromised. Adding digestive enzyme supplements with meals can replace what your pancreas no longer produces adequately. And many people find relief with broad-spectrum enzymes taken 15 minutes before eating. Probiotic foods become essential rather than optional with fermented foods like yogurt, kefir, sarat, and kimchi helping maintain gut bacteria diversity. Though you need to consume them daily since your hostile gut environment makes it hard for beneficial bacteria to colonize permanently. Fiber strategy completely changes after 75. While you need it for regular bowel movements, too much can overwhelm your slowed system. So experts recommend gradually increasing soluble fiber from foods like oatmeal, bananas, and sweet potatoes, while being cautious with raw vegetables that your weakened system struggles to break down. But as your digestive system struggles, an even more serious change is occurring in your sense of balance. Number 2, your balance system undergoes irreversible deterioration. Starting exactly at age 75, 3 separate balance systems in your body begin failing simultaneously in what researchers call a triple threat to stability that makes falls not just likely, but almost inevitable without intervention. Your inner ear's vestibular system, which contains tiny calcium crystals and fluid fill canals that detect head position and movement, loses about 40% of its sensory cells by age 75, meaning your brain receives confused or delayed signals about where your body is in space. The proprioceptors in your muscles and joints, those specialized sensors that tell your brain where your body parts are without looking, decrease in sensitivity by up to 50%, which explains why you might miss a step or misjudge distances you've navigated perfectly for decades. Your vision's contribution to balance drops dramatically as contrast sensitivity decreases by 60% and depth perception weakens by 40%, making it harder to see edges, judge distances, and detect obstacles, especially in low light conditions. But the real disaster happens in your brain's integration center. Where all these signals come together, the processing speed for balance information slows by up to 70%. Meaning, even when your sensors detect a problem, your brain can't coordinate a response fast enough to prevent a fall. Your ankle strategy, the first line of defense against small balance disruptions, weakens dramatically as the small muscles around your ankles lose 40% of their strength, and your ankle flexibility decreases by up to 50%, forcing your body to rely on hip and stepping strategies that are less efficient and more likely to fail. The psychological component compounds everything after 75. Fear of falling actually increases fall risk by 30% because anxiety causes muscle tension and reduces the fluid automatic movements necessary for good balance. Your blood pressure regulation also affects balance with orthostatic hypotension, that dizzy feeling when you stand up, affecting 30% of people over 75 and creating moments of extreme fall risk during position changes. To combat this deterioration, balance training must become as routine as brushing your teeth, with specific exercises that challenge all 3 systems. Standing on one foot while turning your head challenges vestibular function. Closing your eyes while standing challenges proprioception, and reaching exercises challenge visual spatial integration. The dual task training approach shows remarkable results, where you perform balance exercises while simultaneously doing cognitive tasks like counting backwards or naming animals, which mirrors real-life situations where you need to maintain balance while thinking about something else. Tai Chi has emerged as perhaps the perfect balance intervention for people over 75, with studies showing it reduces fall risk by up to 45% because it combines slow, controlled movements with weight, shifting mental focus, and social engagement. Environmental modifications become non-negotiable, removing throw rugs, installing grab bars not just in bathrooms but along hallways, improving lighting, especially on stairs and in transitions between rooms, and creating clear pathways free of obstacles. Footwear strategy completely changes after 75, with proper shoes becoming medical equipment rather than fashion choices. You need firm non-slip soles, low heels, no more than 1 inch, and secure fastening, with many podiatrists recommending wearing supportive shoes even inside the house. The timing of activities matters enormously. Your balance is best in late morning after you've been moving for a few hours, but before afternoon fatigue sets in. So scheduling challenging activities during this window reduces fall risk. And now we've reached the big one, the change that affects absolutely everything else. Number 1, your muscle mass enters catastrophic decline. At exactly 75 years old, your body triggers what scientists call sarcopenia overdrive, a biological self-destruct sequence where you lose muscle mass at a rate of 3 to 5% per year, which means by age 80, you've lost up to 25% of your remaining muscle. And this isn't just about looking frail. This is about losing the very tissue that determines whether you can get out of a chair, climb stairs, or live independently. The shocking truth that researchers at the National Institute on Aging discovered is that after 75, your body literally starts eating its own muscle for fuel, even when you're eating adequate calories. Because of a phenomenon called anabolic resistance, where your muscles stop responding to protein and exercise the way they used to, your satellite cells, the stem cells responsible for muscle repair and growth, decrease by 70% after age 75, which means when you damage muscle through normal activity, it simply doesn't rebuild, leading to permanent losses that accumulate day after day. The type 2 muscle fibers, the ones responsible for power and quick movements like catching yourself from falling or standing up quickly, disappear at twice the rate of type 1 fibers, which explains why simple tasks like opening jars or getting out of load chairs become increasingly impossible. Your motor units, the nerve muscle connections that control movement, die off at an alarming rate after 75, with each lost motor unit meaning dozens of muscle fibers that simply stop working forever and your body doesn't create new ones to replace them. The hormonal catastrophe that occurs at 75 makes everything worse. Testosterone drops to nearly undetectable levels in men. Growth hormone production falls by 80%, and IGF-1, a crucial muscle-building hormone, becomes so low that your muscles literally can't receive the signal to grow, even when you exercise. Inflammation markers like interleukin-6 and tumor necrosis factor increase by up to 300% after 75, creating a catabolic state where your body is constantly breaking down muscle faster than it can build it, regardless of your nutrition or activity level. The mitochondria in your muscle cells, the powerhouses that produce energy, decrease in number by 50% and efficiency by another 30%, meaning your muscles have 65% less energy available for any activity, which explains that crushing fatigue that hits after minimal exertion. Protein synthesis, the process of building new muscle, slows by up to 60% after 75, which means you need to consume far more protein than younger people just to maintain muscle, let alone build it. With research showing people over 75 need at least 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, compared to 0.8 grams for younger adults. The really terrifying part is that muscle loss accelerates during any period of inactivity. Just 10 days of bed rest after 75 can cause the same muscle loss as 2 years of normal aging. And recovering that lost muscle becomes nearly impossible due to anabolic resistance. To fight this catastrophic decline, protein timing becomes absolutely critical, with research showing you need 25 to 30 grams of high-quality protein at each meal to trigger muscle protein synthesis. And spreading protein throughout the day works better than loading it all at dinner. Leucine, an amino acid found in eggs, chicken, and dairy, becomes your best friend after 75 because it's the specific trigger for muscle protein synthesis. And you need at least 3 grams per meal to overcome anabolic resistance. Vitamin D becomes crucial because deficiency, which affects 75% of people over 75, directly causes muscle weakness and accelerates sarcopenia, with studies showing supplementation can improve muscle function by up to 20%. The timing of exercise matters enormously. Morning workouts when your cortisol is naturally higher and your anabolic resistance is lowest show better results than afternoon or evening training. Recovery periods must extend significantly with 72 hours between training the same muscle groups compared to 48 hours for younger adults because your reduced satellite cells and slower protein synthesis need extra time. Maintaining muscle after 75 requires eating like an athlete. Even if you feel like anything but consuming protein immediately after waking when your muscles have been fasting all night, having a protein-rich snack before bed to prevent overnight muscle breakdown, and never going more than 4 hours without protein during the day. Understanding that this muscle loss is happening to everyone helps remove the shame and frustration because this isn't about being lazy or weak. This is about fighting a biological process that nature programmed into every human who reaches 75. These 5 changes aren't possibilities or probabilities. They're certainties that await every single person who reaches 75. But knowing about them transforms them from terrifying surprises into manageable challenges. If this information opened your eyes to what's really happening after 75, hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss our next video on the specific exercises that can slow each of these changes by up to 40%. Click the notification bell to get alerted when we post because your future self will thank you for taking action today. Thanks for watching, and remember, aging might be mandatory, but suffering through it isn't.